All right, guys, it's tool time, which is my favorite time. These are the most useful kitchen tools that I know of, and some of the least. Let's start with knives. First, the knife roll. These are awesome. Transportation, storage, does it all. This one is made by a company called Finn. They're based in Vermont, I think, but this, I mean, I've had this thing for, I don't know, 12 years or something, a long time, and it's withstood professional use and lots of travel, and awesome. So inside of this, I have my knives. These are my babies. We'll start with the tiniest little paring knife, which I'm not a huge fan, but is a nice one. Sometimes I use it. Sometimes I use a pocket knife. We'll go right to my beastly Misono UX10, which, oh, it's glorious, isn't it? It's a glorious, glorious knife. This is one of the more popular knives in high-end kitchens, and I resisted getting one of these for years, but when I finally did, oh, it was worth the wait. These things are awesome. It's like a sports car of knives. It's gonna be hard to focus in on that, but it's got such a thin profile. It's a 12-incher, and the bigger knives are really useful to help with fatigue when you have to cut a lot of vegetables. I mean, it's all fun and games until somebody throws a case of Brussels sprouts at you. I love this knife. I really do. I love it. Okay, now on to my very first love, my first knife, which is this Matsumoto Giotto. This is a 9.4 inch, I believe. And this is actually the second one I've owned. The first one I wore down to a nub, but it's high carbon steel, sharpens very, very well. This particular one, I think I've got a 90-10 on. Very, very sharp edge. And yeah, this thing is great. This thing is awesome. I relied on this for many years. This is a great, great knife. Matsumoto, I believe they're based in Sakai City in Japan. They make really, really good knives. And this is a good one. Next is another Misono. This is in this beautiful Seiya that my brother, who's an extremely talented guitar maker and woodworker, made for me. This is a beautiful profile, great for butchery work, and these are always sharpened in a 90-10 fashion. It's gonna be hard to see that, but let's see if you can get that edge and the reflection. Yeah, look at that. So that's one side, and then the other side, you can see, let me see if I can catch it. Much smaller edge. So it makes it sharper if you think about the angles, which is great for butchery work because you've just got a really sharp little knife here. One of my favorites is a Yanagi. This is a sashimi knife, but I do not use this for sashimi. This I use as a slicing knife. The way the knife is sharpened creates an extremely sharp edge. Don't even want to get close to this edge. Honestly, I've gotten some gnarly injuries with this thing. It's bled me, but it's worth it. This thing has served me very well for a lot of years. Also high carbon steel. I really like high carbon knives. This also fantastic knife. Okay, and also in here, we have got some of my finer tools, little tweezers for finer work, herbs, cleaning off a plate. Very helpful. I like the offsets. I like those a lot. We've got my big tweezers, which these are unsung heroes of the professional kitchen. These are very, very helpful. And also, a favorite, chopsticks. These are great. They're very, very delicate tools. Some people hate them, but I really like them for like getting under the tines of a grill. If you've got delicate fish skin, and I've worked in some kitchens where you just can't use tongs. Great tools. We're here, so let's talk about some of my least favorite knives. First off, this is a sabatier knife, which is an old French pattern. But I don't care particularly about sabatier, but it is these European style patterns with these big heavy bolster here, which is just, it's a design flaw. There's no other way of putting it. What happens is as you sharpen, eventually you can't get past this big hunk of steel, so you get this U shape in the blade and you just can't touch the cutting board with it anymore. It sucks. The moment I walked into the first professional kitchen I walked into, they told me that I had to throw this away. They actually told me to throw it in the garbage, which I resisted. But the next day I went to a Japanese knife store and bought my Masimoto Kyoto. So, not a fan. Also, we have got a Wusthof here. Wusthof, I've got nothing against them as a company. I'm sure they make fine knives. But what I don't like is this style of fillet knife. I just don't like it. I think they suck. And that's not to say that professional fishmongers, whatever, I'm sure get great use out of these. But in professional kitchens, I have found these to be nothing but a hassle. And I can fillet fish so much better with a stiff knife. What you get with this little profile is this flex. And the idea is that you can flex it against fish bones and cut through it, but I don't like it. But it does come with that sheath, which is pretty cool. Okay, what else we got? Let's talk about one of my favorite little tools, which is the offset palette knife. These are fantastic. I used to challenge myself on the grill to spend an entire service I think I did this for over a year, an entire service on the grill using only an offset palette knife and a spoon. And this was in a wood-fired kitchen, so it was a wood-fired grill. This served me incredibly well. It's great for pastry, but it's also really good for manipulating things delicately. I really can't say enough about these little tools. They're great. Speaking of the grill, tongs. These big 16-inch grill tongs. Edland is the manufacturer of these. I can't say enough about this brand as well. These tongs are incredible, but heavy gauge stainless steel tongs. Skip that plastic garbage. Just skip it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. You buy these, they might be a little bit more expensive, but I don't think these are particularly expensive, but these will last you for your entire life. I mean, these look like almost new, and these have had years of professional use. They still, to this day, still snappy as hell. Great tongs. Something I don't like, ladles. Just not a ladle fan. You know, if you're doing soup, it's like you have to do this thing where you like scoop and then you dip it really fast so it doesn't drip all over the place. You know what's so much better for that? The lowly pint container. This is so much better. Pour, just like this, little bend and a pour. This is how you get a perfect pour, not this garbage. These are great for skimming if you're making any sort of broths. Another one that I love, not just love, total requirement, are a Kuhn Rikon peeler. There is no other peeler. There is only this peeler. Very delicate. You can not just peel things, but you can also like shave avocados or whatever. You can do a lot with these peelers. Fantastic. And here's one that I'm not a fan of, which are these cake testers. Now, I'm not saying that these aren't useful for cake, but what you'll see these used for a lot in professional kitchens are for testing the doneness of fish. Because what happens when the connective tissue breaks down as soon as it hits like a medium rare, so if you very delicately put this through, as soon as you feel it give, you know that it's cooked. It's hit that nice medium rare temperature and it's totally delicious. Fantastic fish cooked at that temperature. But at the same time, I hate these things. I think they slow you down. Arteco is a fantastic brand. I've got nothing against Arteco. They make spectacular pastry tools. I have a bunch of them. But for savory applications, not a fan. What else we got? Okay, here we go. This is a can opener. I know, a can opener, but it's the best one. I hate those little twisty ones and the big industrial ones that you see in kitchens. For some reason, at least here in New York, the health department hates them. When I was working in my first restaurant, which was a very fancy restaurant, they took our can openers away from us because the health department hated them. So we had to literally use knives. We had to use knives to open cans. This was a very high-end restaurant, and we were literally in the basement opening cans with knives. It was not cool. If only I had known about this back then. It is Ganji. I think it's a Japanese can opener, and it's awesome. Love this thing. Here's a fun kind of a toy. These are, I believe they're called Searsalls. You attach them to your propane torches. Fairly certain that people use these when they're cooking with sous vide tools, which I've done a lot of professionally, but I don't do it at home. It's not my bag. I also honestly don't think that these are particularly useful for sous vide, and mainly for me, it just comes down to patience. I mean, searing a sous vide steak with this is gonna take you like 20 minutes of holding a propane torch. But these are fucking s'mores machines. I mean, this, toasting a marshmallow, you can't beat that. You just can't. Here's one that I don't love, and they are nothing against this company. I'm sure this is a fine company, but these pH strips, I don't love these pH strips. I think that they're inaccurate and hard to read. Now, for some things that doesn't matter, but when you are making things like kombucha or you're fermenting things, accurate pH measurements are essential. If you're making beer, they are absolutely essential. So what I would strongly recommend instead is a pH meter, digital pH meter. These are not that expensive, and these things are awesome. They give you very accurate measurements. They're easy to calibrate. They last forever. They're waterproof. This is Apera. This is a great tool for fermentation. That's what I use it for, fermentation. Speaking of fermentation, another one of my favorite tools for very like niche purposes is this refractometer. This measures something called Brix, which is the sugar content of something. So if you're making kombucha is a great example. If you want to be consistent, if you want to create real consistency and make the same kombucha over and over again, which I don't know about you, but that's how I roll. I can measure my Brix, I can develop kombucha recipes, and I can know exactly what the Brix is, exactly what I want it to be. Big believer of this in all things culinary. Measure it, get it right, know what's correct, and then keep tasting that, and you'll keep tasting the right thing, and that way your palate can really, really grow. So I love these tools. They're fantastic. Here's a favorite of mine, these Le Creuset rubber spatulas. Great shape. You can actually do a lot of presentations with these. This is another thing I had to get in my first kitchen job, and that was almost 20 years ago. Yeah, that's right. I've dated myself. I mean, look at that thing. That thing is disgusting looking at this point. This thing is held up. I mean, this thing is still, it's like a little divoted, but it still works. I still use this thing all the time. So highly recommend Le Creuset rubber spatula, silicone spatula. The next things I got are these scales. I love scales, guys. I love them. This is a Escale, I believe is the brand. This goes in 1 gram measurements. It goes up to 5 kilograms. I really, really, really cannot say enough how important it is to use weight measurements for things. Volume measurements are great for large amounts of things, but this is far more consistent. You can measure anything with weight. I mean, who really wants to take out the tablespoons? Like, just use a scale. It's so much easier. So this I use for large amounts, and then I also have got this O House. This is a chemical scale, These are really actually very expensive, but they're super useful. This goes down to 0.1 grams. It doesn't go very high. It's only 200 grams, so you can't weigh very much of anything on this. But this is great for chemicals, if you're into that stuff. You know, gums and all of that, hydrocolloids and sphericals if you're getting nerdy. But at home, this is also great as a yeast scale. I find myself using this all the time for pastry making for yeast, because a lot of the times you just want that, you know, 1.7 grams of yeast, and this very helpful for that. So those are a few of my favorite kitchen gadgets. I hope you guys enjoyed watching that, and I will see you soon.